Yeah, the smoke's coming out of this guy too. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual live stream opening of Saya Moriyasu's exhibition, Spooky Actions at a Distance. My name is Judith Reinhardt. I'm the owner and director of the J. Reinhardt Gallery that's located right here in Pioneer Square, which will acknowledges the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, and we are honored to be here. I am thrilled to welcome Saya to the gallery.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here and so thankful to have an exhibition where I could kind of go wild and put my artwork up everywhere.
Boy, did you ever.
I also wanted to say thank you to Judith for hosting the exhibition, and for Peter Gauchis for writing up an amazing piece for the catalog that I just am in love with. And also for the Nancy Guppy and Vincent Pierce of Art Zone for filming, and for Jasmine Kaimig for doing this piece in The Stranger. It's been really great to have people around and ask me questions and documenting the work.
Well, and so much support, and the catalog is online now. If you go to the exhibition page on the gallery website, you can read the essay. It's fantastic. You can order your catalog online. We'll also have a few of them in the gallery in the next week or so. So you can feel free to shoot me an email. Website's just jreinhardtgallery.com. And the gallery is open Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. The show runs between now and June 26th. So feel free to come by. There's no appointment necessary. There are 2 Saturdays though where we would require an appointment. On Saturday, June 12th and Saturday, June 26th, Saya is going to be in the gallery between 1 and 4 p.m. For kind of extended, fun opening visiting times.
Yeah.
So.
And wear a mask. We're not wearing a mask tonight because we're both vaccinated, but in general, bring a mask.
Yeah, we'd love to have you mask up and come on down and see the show. So with that, thank you again for being here. I want to ask you right off the bat about the show title. It's Spooky Actions at a Distance, and I understand that is a Einstein quote.
Yes.
Why did you pick this, and what inspired this for you?
Well, a friend of mine, Doug Hare, had one time mentioned that quote, and it kind of stuck with me. And I didn't remember what it was about or anything. But as I was making this work, I started thinking about that quote again, and I didn't remember why Einstein said it. But I thought that would be a really good show title because of kind of the pandemic and everything sort of this action at a distance. We're not in places, but we're going through portals to see things and to visit people, and it's really changed the way we interact with people. And then I looked it up, and I was like, I felt like when I read the article I read, it felt like, wow, I feel like this could be my show statement. It was about sort of interacting with that time and space and what we think of it might be different than it actually is. That you think that for something to have an interaction on another thing, it has to bridge time or space. But in quantum mechanics, they've been doing subatomic experiments and doing things that don't share the same time and space and having a reaction. So it's kind of scientifically proving things that I feel about how the world works. And these pieces kind of are an extension of that. It's sort of come from my Japanese heritage and the way that I view the world. Specifically, I was thinking about that my family altar came to live with me in 2019, or parts of it. So family altar in a Japanese home is a box that has several things in it. It has usually a Buddha figure, it has an incense burner, candles, a bell, and pictures or mementos from your family. So in a way, you're growing up with a built-in portal in your home that you go and you ring the bells and speak to your ancestors and then clap to say goodbye, and you do these things. And so it's that sort of meditation on things. And so a lot of the pieces have holes that could be like incense sensors, but they're also kind of physical embodiments. and they're sort of living through the Trump era of like having to feel that protective armor and how it's pierced and what gives you power, and having animals and things that can guard you and be part of your life.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, and I think we've talked a little bit about this too, that connection to your ancestors through time and space, which is something that in Japanese culture is not considered as taboo, maybe as in Western culture. It's more accepted, like it's not as a scary thing. Like ghost stories are loving things.
Yes. So yeah, if you think ahead too, if you have questions, if you're logged into the YouTube, you can ask them, or you can share with me your spooky stories. And it's also, if you say something, hi or something, then we know you were here. But yeah, I think that sort of acceptance of science and acceptance of the supernatural or other world is just kind of, it holds the same place, and it doesn't have that taboo of being crazy or superstitious or something like that. It's just kind of matter of the fact.
It just is, yeah. That's fabulous. So when we had talked about a lot of these figures, you have them, they're stacked and there's things inside things, and that's really great. And a lot of them are actually incense burners, where, I don't know if you guys can see, there's smoke coming out the top of this smoke column. And they do feel like these just little worlds that you've created, that you want to go into them. And even some of the figures that are a little more, actual little figures, you want to be part of whatever is inside there. And I love that about them. And when I was looking up what you had mentioned, a lot of them are inspired by Hanawai figures, which were funerary figures in ancient Japanese culture that were buried. And I found that they were just same little whimsical moments with them. Can you talk about how those figures inspired the work too?
Well, I grew up in our house. My parents had replicas of Haniwa figures, so they're usually terracotta, and they have holes for eyes and the mouth. There's no representing them. So it's very similar to how I've done a lot of these pieces. And it wasn't a conscious effort that I was making it, but my friend Erin was over and she said, "Oh, you're making Haniwa." And I said, "Oh yeah, you're right." But it's something that was familiar for me from childhood, but also sort of resonated with the time of the political era where, that we were in. Many people felt that we needed some extra protection, or
in many ways,
to guard ourselves and to help others and channel good energy. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of a lot of that going into the work.
Well, another, when we were installing the show, which was just so much fun, you had mentioned that the installation of the work is very important to experiencing it. And I would invite you to put questions in the chat. We will do a Q&A at the end, but also come to the show. We have done this installation in addition to kind of these figures and sculptures of these porcelain pieces that you talk a little bit about, like the mouths and the eyes, and they are definitely something that exude those feelings. So
yeah, so I was in doing the work. I mean, that work, this work, body work, started in 2019, kind of, amidst this, certain political climate. But then the pandemic happened, and I just got fixated on Gerhard Richter's painting of the mouth, and how, it's just because we have, the first part of the pandemic, when we were starting to cover up, and we were lacking seeing that for most of the people in our lives. And so it kind of extra fascinated me, and then sort of how the mouth becomes an eye, becomes a hole, and just kind of all that, and taking each painting and kind of exploring that some more. And all of these are porcelain, so for the most part where it's white, it's the color of the clay, and if you get close to them, you can see the texture of the canvas that they were rolled on. So I like to think of them as porcelain canvases because of that texture, but they're very handmade, because porcelain often you think of as very refined and very rarefied, but it's got a very raw quality to it, which I like, and the oil paint on it, it's I enjoy painting so much because the color can just be the color instead of always with the glaze. I usually like the glaze in the end, but when you're doing it, everything just looks like pastels, dry pastels that
Until it fires.
you're putting on, and then you're like, oh, it's good, or oh, it's not good. So,
did you, when you created these, were you cutting out pieces, or were you, like, how are they being formed?
so rolling out the porcelain on canvas or on fabric, and then just building up the edges around it.
So very much your hand.
Yeah,
in them.
it's very much, and I'm, I was trying to make them as circular as possible without any device. So it's just always kind of fun too to be like, is it a circle? Can I tell it's a circle? And they're not. I mean, they're a little bit off, but it's just sort of some sort of fun practice to just try to make a circle, to try to make it round. And I also felt like, there's so much holes in that work, and then the mouths, that it's kind of like I imagined walking in the gallery and kind of seeing the sculptures and then kind of being swept over to the mouths, and it's sort of like, to me it is sort of an animated experience where you're kind of going into the sculptures first and going into the voids, and then them kind of coming out into these eye-mouth portals kind of things. And the names kind of play off a lot of things, like this one's called Pocket. So, is your mouth a pocket? No, but it's a whole, just like the kind of thinking about your body and the words we use for different things makes you think about it differently. Like this one's called Stoma, which is a permanent or temporary opening in the body, which I don't know, something about them putting the temporary. like this is permanent, right?
Right.
It's not going to close. So that kind of stuff.
Well, and a lot of the color that you use in these, it's contrasts really nicely with the soft porcelain, but a lot of these kind of pinks and oranges and little hints of blue, was that pulled from that image of the Gerhard Richter mouth?
The blue wasn't so much, but the red. It's all cadmium red, which is, kind of a rare item now because it's a poison, but it sort of kind of came up with my own palette and just kind of stuck with it. But it has a big variety depending on how it's mixed or if thinned with different things.
I think they're really lovely. I feel like they have an interesting contrast with the softness of the porcelain and the oil paint with a lot of the work that you have with the glazes. And you have one particular piece that I know was super stressful for the glazing for you. But what has ended up with it is being this gorgeous piece.
Yeah, for the most part, when I'm working on things, they usually come more quickly, or I can kind of do things like the paintings all have a sort of immediacy of color and shape, and I don't stress too much. But this particular piece that you'll see in a moment is called Haniwa Friend, which is a reference to the Haniwa, and it's sort of a friend because I felt like in the end I felt a very deep kinship with this piece. But I didn't even think it would be in the show because the glaze, this part of the glaze was always amazing, but then this part was super ugly, and I just really was like, I'm sorry, but you're never going to make it into the show. You're a failure. But then I tried one more time and put it upside down, and now it has like little phrenology bumps on its head. And,
it does.
And I put a light in it, and there's another little figure inside. And I was, because this is the spooky action at a distance, I assumed I would not, maybe have many people coming in because we've all been staying in and staying safe, and now that seems like it's changed somewhat with the vaccinations. But so when I was conceiving the work and started documenting, I started making GIFs and seeing the work in the round. And at first it was thinking about documenting the pieces, but then they kind of immediately became their own kind of funny thing because then you can animate them and kind of see something in a way you actually can never see it in person. But then I thought, well, I'd like to put Haniwa Friend on a pedestal and have people be able to turn it and kind of have a more interactive quality with the work.
Well, and it is fun because since there are the holes and there is a little guy inside, so you'll have to come to the show to see what's inside. But as you turn him, you get these little peaks, and the light will change on the inside, and the light changes around it, and the light hits the glaze, and it might show you something a little bit different. So I feel like this is a totally strange piece, and I love it because it also continues to open up, just even since we've had it in the gallery. Just
It's become your friend now?
it's kind of become my friend because it does, the glaze is super fascinating, and when the light hits it different, and even when the light comes through the windows, it hits it different.
Yeah.
And I love him in contrast with the porcelain pieces because he's so dark and so heavy, but there's still a connection there.
Yeah, it kind of draws you back into this, so you kind of go sculpture, then more 2D sculpture, and then kind of down into this piece.
Yeah, that you want to dive into.
I think that brings us to Junko.
I know. I was so. In addition to Saya's work, we received some fantastic new sculptures by a Japanese artist, Junko Yamamoto, who spends her time between Seattle and Japan, and had been spending most of this past year in Japan. And so she created these fantastic plushies that I just love. And one of the things that really connects her work with Saya's work, besides having, you know, a similar ancestry, is that she does talk about space and time in her work.
Yes, when I was looking up her work, I've heard her speak about her work, but I was looking in the Art Beasties, a group that she's with. She was talking about the time and space and connectedness. And before I had looked, Googled that, I was like looking at her paintings. I thought, oh, I'm just like projecting into my ideas into her work, because I'm seeing exactly what I'm doing in her work, and that feeling of going through portals and feeling the space and the time, and sort of having these wonderful figures that make you feel really connected and loved and safe, because they're soft and beautiful. So, but then I looked it up, and I was like, oh, her statement is, we're really in the same moment, and I'm sure it's because of our ancestry. And I mean, we're also friends, and she made me homemade bread during the pandemic and brought it over. So I mean, she's just like an amazing, wonderful person. And yeah, you've got to come see these pieces.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I've also found it interesting that her works and your works, I mean, you're making little creatures with eyes and noses and mouths, and they're strange little guys. And her plushies almost feel like they've got a life. There's a character there that's really fantastic.
They really do. Yeah. They're so gorgeous.
So I love the work together. So you definitely come and see the work together.
And she's handmade the fabric and put so much into them. And they even have a little smell of Japan in them.
They do. Well, so shout out to Junko if she's watching. We miss you. We hope to see you soon.
Hi, Junko.
Yeah.
And also thank you. I just came in today, and Judith showed me lots of red dots, and all purchased by artists. And I'm really, so touched when other artists buy my work, and that the support and love of the Seattle art community, and it's incredible.
Yeah. No, we appreciate anyone and everyone. And I mean, this body work truly is spectacular. I feel like I first saw your work and fell in love with your work probably over a decade ago, and it spoke to me in a way that I'd never been spoken to before. And I purchased one of your pieces on a long-term payment plan, and it took me forever, but I still have my Saya, and he still lives in a place of honor. And it opened up this whole new world for me of I could be an art collector. And now look what I've done. So in some ways it feels like it's come full circle that we're now working together, and I'm super thrilled about this show, but it's seeing your work progress and change and really become more and more sophisticated and fascinating is what I love about following artists and collecting artwork, is seeing the build up and the change and where things will take you.
Well, and I feel so lucky to have worked with gallery, with G. Gibson first, and then Jay Reinhardt, that really allow me to go for it and don't tell me what I can't do. Just support and love it. And and it also is great that you bring up the food dogs, because it's sort of that idea of Shintoism, and sort of that some objects have energy, but also you give them energy and can enhance that. So I think that when you live with a piece and that you enjoy it, it does grow and become part of your world.
Yeah,
It's watched your life, and that's something. And that's why when, like, I love going in thrift stores and things, because old things have a certain power and energy, and they've lived with somebody. And I think that's kind of incredible thing about having an object or a painting, or the painting's eyes have followed you, like these have the eyes that follow you.
Well, and you had mentioned, we talked about there's this fine line between science and spirituality when it comes to Buddhism and Shintoism, where it's this absolute 100% belief in the scientific fact of life, and then where all this other energy comes from that might be more on the spiritual side, that I, as a not very spiritual person, I find incredibly fascinating, and it grounding in a lot of ways too. Does that like enter into your work at all too? Or am I just...
Well, no, I mean, it totally enters into my work, because I think that, coming from like the past 5 years of, feeling constant assault of the news and things going on and feeling a lot of powerlessness, but then when you read that quantum mechanics, that your kind of intentions and actions at a distance can have power, it feels good. Like, so trying to be active on all levels, and that's also like the mental, spiritual level, to kind of think about things and try to make a difference in the world and make things better.
Yeah, for positive thing.
Yes, positive.
Well, do we have any questions? Or anybody commenting?
Well, we've got some comments.
Okay.
Aaron Shigaki says, congratulations, Saya. Julie Pashkas, wonderful work. Love the ideas and the pieces.
Oh, thank you.
Miss T, beautiful and magical work.
Oh, magical is a perfect word. It's true.
Komiza 52, Saya, loving the pieces and the conversation.
Oh, great.
Watching in Soap Lake.
Oh,
Glenn Hurley, really nice work, Saya.
Oh.
We love our pieces. They have a lovely charm. Laura Bredax, love your concept and work, Saya. Kat H, I've loved learning about the work through this event, and I'm so excited to see the work in person. We'll be fully vaxxed as of tomorrow.
Come on down on the 12th, or the 26th.
Kathleen Hunt says, thank you for bringing us through the portal. Beautiful work as always. Love the concept.
Thank you. So great.
Well, one question that had come up earlier was about the vessels that, well, I mean, I think we know the answer. Some of the vessels are meant to be for incense burning. Is that safe for the sculptures?
Yeah, it's safe for the sculptures. I was kind of riffing off the idea, during the pandemic, of tiny fires. I mean, it also was kind of like talking about tiny fires in each of us, like it's a political motivation to kind of burn. So my friend Lana Sundberg was having sometimes outdoor parties, and we would burn things to kind of purge things and to send wishes in the world. And then so I was kind of thinking of the tiny fires, these little fire pots that you could burn things in, and for actual functionality too, like they could be hand warmers. So I kind of got into the design of vent systems and things, but also the whole sensor, like something that you burn incense in and send wishes out. So there's a kind of a lot of fire references in the work. And ceramics is called fire. It is fire.
Ceramics is fire.
It goes through over 2,000 degrees.
So the little fire pots that you had made, we just kind of looked at them briefly, but there's images of them online called the Gatherers, and they're these great little green creatures full of kindling. And could those actually be used?
I think they could be. I didn't try fires in those because they probably would get pretty hot, because they're not, a lot of these are double walled. I mean, I really got into the engineering. My father was an engineer, so maybe that's why. But the Gatherers it is based on the design. I was looking at the Kyoto Art and Antique Sale online, because the last version of it was online, and they called it a hibachi, and I was like, wait, a hibachi? You can't cook in that, because it was like those Gatherers. It's just a little pot with, and it had a figure similar to those. And then I looked it up, and I was like, in English we use it as like we're going to cook on it, which is a different word in Japanese, and it just means fire pot. And so because the houses in Japan were so incredibly cold in the winter, that people would have their own individual fire pot. So it was kind of funny how the tiny fires, then I found out there's fire pots and that.
And then we spent so much time outdoors with our fire pits, far away from each other.
Still kind of worried and everything. But so in a way, then because I thought, well, maybe these aren't so functional to put a fire in, though you could, because they're glazed and everything. But I like that they were gatherers, that they were kind of like the supporting agents to the tiny fires, that they can hold everything. So I got kind of into, like my friend Glenn Herlihy made me tiny kindling, and some of that's in there because it was like so beautiful. I'm like, oh, this is like perfect kindling for the tiny fires, because he's the one who taught me about tiny fires. He's like, but not in a container. He was like, you can just make a little fire to keep you warm, and on one of our outdoor nights, and I was like obsessed with that
Making little fire.
Yeah. So he's the one that started that whole tiny fire thing, was that. So even in the pandemic, ideas were generated
Yes.
with people.
Leslie Taylor says, wonderful to see you from a distance. And Aaron Shigaki has a question. Maybe this is an odd question. What do you think your parents would think of this work?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, they were always super supportive and very wonderful. And we, grew up in an art family. If you watch the Art Zone profile they did, that you can see some family photos. It was a very creative, happy
were great.
place.
They were so great photos.
So I think they would both just really enjoy it and see things. And we would talk about the Haniwa. I mean, both my parents have passed on, so that, we would talk about the different references in Haniwa and the names, and it would be great if they could see it.
And not really a question. Tran, I don't know what the username is, but they say, wonderful to see you both. Congratulations, Saya. Thank you for mentioning me.
Oh.
It's Tran? Now I'm like, who's Tran?
Who's Tran?
Tran,
Put your name in there. Any final questions? Anything else that we haven't talked about that you want people to know about the show?
Well, I just want to say thank you to Jeff McGrath, my husband and partner. He's been a really good lockdown buddy, and who don't know what I would have done without him. We really had a good year together, and I felt like a lot of this year was kind of like a meditation. I mean, and I also want to acknowledge that everybody's gone through a lot this year, and you may be at different points in whatever in your life, and that I hope that you're well and everything's good. I mean, even today I was contacting my friend in Soap Lake, and her whole family had COVID and she's still recovering. So it's, it's been a for real year of things COVID related and not, and just want to send my love.
We do have a question. Miss T asks, can you share some more about the rituals connected to the Haniwa?
Well, the Haniwa was 300 CE to 800 CE, so they had this big kind of like keyhole shaped burial mounds with, I think they had water around them, and they were like a half a mile from end to end, so really huge. And then on top there was the Haniwa figure. And I actually, so archaeologists don't know why. I mean, but it seems obvious why so we don't really know the rituals of the Haniwa in history, but guessing about burial things, they kind of guarded the space. And I'm not really sure why they always omitted the eyes and the mouth and had them as holes, but to me it makes sense that it makes them a little more intense. So maybe if you were thinking about desecrating that mound, you would not do it, because there's sort of the energy that's contained in that space that is very felt. If you look up Haniwa, I mean, there's these amazing like monkeys and warriors and
horses.
And you can see that different artisans made them. They weren't a generic style, so you could tell oh, those artists in that area had a certain kind of vibe to them, and then other ones had a different vibe. And it was 500 years that they were making them, so it makes sense that they evolved and changed as well.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to our virtual opening. We're One day we'll get back to in real life ones. But in the meantime, you can see all the work available online at jreinhardtgallery.com. The video that we mentioned, the Art Zone video, thank you Nancy Guppy and thank you Vince Pierce, is also on the website. And this will be on this talk will be on the website. So you can engage with things there, check things out, see the works online. Come to the gallery. We are here Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. No appointment needed. But there are 2 Saturdays where Saya will be in the gallery on the 12th of June and the 26th of June from 1 to 4. So you can sign up for your time to visit during those times to see Saya and get more information if you'd like. Thank you. Thank you so much, Saya.
Well,
thank you all for watching. Follow us online. You can follow us on Instagram. You can subscribe to the YouTubes. But thank you so much and have a good night.